Okay, so we are going to learn techniques on making enemy textures wet. To follow up that statement, I want to say that I mean we are going to make enemy textures reflective, as if they have been affected by liquid. Don't get any weird ideas. I'm going to split this tutorial in 4 parts: the texture, the model, the lighting, and finally overlays. We are going to use this simple render as an example. Quick note, I have the camera on a very low focal length so that the reflections in the background can make a nice bokeh effect. Now I'll quickly go through the texture with you. It's super simple and would definitely not be as good if not for the other parts of the scene. So it's basically just a BSDF with a noise texture plugged into the factor of a mix color set to multiply. The colors are a lightish purple and a darkish blue, and I edited the values a bit, as you can see on screen. Then I plugged the exact same tree, excluding the mix color, into the roughness of the BSDF, and I changed some of the colors of the color ramp, making the black a little gray. Finally, I set up the metallic of the BSDF a little bit up. Super simple. This is how it looks, and it's pretty blech. Now let's make it better. As you can see, there are a bunch of tiles in this render. Now this is a normal tile, Exhibit A, flat and normal. However, in the wet texture, you want your model to reflect light beautifully. In my opinion, the way your object reflects light is vital in having a convincingly wet material. So I'd subdivide this tile a bit and bevel the edges. Beveled edges reflect light fantastically, as we will see in the lighting section. But that's not all. I'll subdivide it a little to add more geometry for the next step, which is to displace it on the x-axis, making the model a little more interesting. I'll then displace it again, but the displacement will affect the entire model. So this is before and this is after. Now this object will reflect the light way better than our normal flat tiles. But the best way to know that is to actually see it in action. So let's move on to the next part of this tutorial: lighting. The main thing about lighting is to have many lights set to very low values. You want to show that the ground is wet, and one way to do so is to pepper your scene with tiny lights, highlighting the edges, adding lights in the background, implying street lights or traffic lights. I definitely recommend using a reference or two when you do this, because if you sit and actually think on these references, you'll see how actual artists utilize lights throughout the scene, faking parts of the environment that isn't actually there, making the environment seem wet and making it seem that it's reflecting parts of the environment that isn't visible to the camera. I mainly used these long and thin airy lights to light up the edges of these tiles. I used tiny point lights to add the bright orange reflections in the background, and I added a green light across to fake a traffic light. In short, lights are essential in showing that your texture is wet. And also, the camera being low depth of field helped the background look wonderful because it turned the sharp pinpricks of the light into round bokeh circles, whatever you call those things. Finally, overlays. Another important thing is overlays. For example, we have a rainy scene over here, so our overlays will be raindrops and rain ripples on the tiles. These overlays are super important to sell the effect that the tiles are actually getting wet by these drops. For the ripples, I added a subdivided plane above the tiles and then made it shrink wrap onto those tiles so the ripples don't float above the ground, it's stuck on the ground. Then I made a simple ripple texture with a Voronoi texture and an emission shader. After the Voronoi texture, I added 2 noise textures like so to make the Voronoi circles a little less uniform. That tree was plugged into the factor of a mix shader that controlled an emission and transparent node. Very simple, but it gets the job done. Even simpler is the rain overlay I added. It's literally a stretched noise texture on a plane with a crunched color ramp. I added a little extra detail by influencing the color of the emission with a diffuse shader. It has the same basic setup of emission, transparent and mix shader. If you have a scene where it's not raining and maybe it's like a window, an aftermath of the rain, then you would add droplets of water flowing on the object instead. But these are the techniques I'd use in making a convincingly wet anime texture. I hope this was clear enough for you to apply it in your renders, and the scene will be up for the golden and diamond spoons on my Patreon. Thanks.
Vamos a ver. Chief Executor! The fax machine has printed a message. Phew. The coordinator says it's time to move on to phase 2. Executor?
The coordinator has already spoken to me about this matter.
But how?
We spoke through that rock.
What? Never mind. So must I give the order?
Yes. Give the order, F8. It's time to initiate phase 2.